Welcome to Kay's in the Garden. I'm Kay, and today we'll be in the garage up-potting our seedlings. Okay, so today we're going to take this opportunity to up-pot our seedlings. And as you can see, it's later in the day, our grow lights are on. So I'll turn the camera around in just a moment so that you guys can see what I'm doing here on the table, and we won't have this bright light behind us. But before we get started on the up-potting of our seedlings, we're also going to try to squeeze in reseeding some of the cells that did not germinate. I can be impatient sometimes, and I probably should wait a little bit longer on some of the peppers before I reseed them. It's been really cold here from the Arctic freeze, so the garage has been really cold, and so I think that's probably slowed down the germination. Even with the heat mats and the grow lights, the temperature has been around 45 degrees here in the garage. It may be colder at night, so during the day it's been about 45. So again, that's pretty cold for the pepper seeds to germinate. But because we're getting so close to February, just a few days away, I really want to try to make sure that we have good germination so that we're not behind on planting outside. So I'm going to go ahead and reseed a few of them. So let's go ahead and get started on up-potting. We'll start with our tomatoes. Okay, so before we get started in up-potting our seedlings, let me share with you the things that we'll be using to up-pot our seedlings. So I went ahead and already pre-mixed my soil, which was just like what we use for our seed starting. I used a cocoa coir and compost and vermiculite in a mixture in the soil, and I added just a little bit of this jumpstart fertilizer from Happy Frog, just a little bit. I just added a small amount because with the seedlings being so young, they don't need a lot of fertilizing at this point. We don't want to burn the roots. They're very sensitive at this stage, so you don't want to add a lot. But a little bit of nutrients, a little bit of fertilizer won't hurt. That actually will kind of help them mature and grow stronger. But you don't need a lot. So I did add a little bit of that. I went ahead and pre-mixed everything. I did add water to it so that when I water these after we pot them, the soil will absorb the water a lot better. I am still using Bootstrap Farmers containers. So now these are the 2-inch pots. They still have the drainage holes at the bottom, and I will be sitting them in a 10-20 tray. And so as you can see here, I have several. I like the more earth tone colors on their trays, on their containers. So you'll see there's several different colors. There's like a gray, there's several shades of green, and then they have this terracotta type color. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started, but that's what we'll be using today. And of course, my handy dandy chopstick so that I can make the holes when I'm potting into the pots. So the first thing I'll do is, this is our tomato tray, and please forgive, I brought in a lot of the sensitive plants. Like this is the lemon tree from outside, the cherry tree is here in the garage, so you might see that in the background. But the first thing we're going to start off with, like I said, is the tomatoes, and we're going to do the yellow Kellogg's. They're definitely ready to come up out of this pot. So what I will do is, I have this little tray here to kind of catch the loose soil as we separate these. I'll put the tag here so I can make sure I know what I'm working with. And then on these trays, there is a hole at the bottom. What I'm going to do is, I usually will squeeze the sides to kind of loosen up the soil. And then I will push up with my pinky, and you can see that the little cell will come out. And then I'll just pull that up. Okay. So this is the cell that contains all of the Kellogg tomato plants. And I have 6 plants. So I'm going to need 6 of the 2-inch pots that we're going to pot it up with. So, and I'll pull them over one at a time. This is the terracotta color that I chose because I have 6 of them already pre-filled with soil. The first one I want to do is loosen these up. Look at those roots. Those are great, beautiful roots. Look at that. Now, one of the things I'll do is just try to loosen up the soil a little bit by twisting and pressing lightly. And you don't want to water these when you're getting ready to pot them up. If you know you are going to pot these up, I stopped watering them a few days ago, and that way the soil will kind of fall loose easier. If it's really moist and wet, it's more difficult to get them to separate. So once the soil gets loose like this, I'll slowly and gently start pulling, maybe shaking and pulling. I won't pull too hard because I don't want to break the roots. However, if you do get a little breakage, you'll be fine. They will grow back. I'm just loosening up the soil with my fingertips, just shaking it, and then I'll gently start pulling them apart, and you can see they tend to come apart pretty easy. If you have one that's a little stubborn and doesn't want to separate, just kind of shake a little bit more of that dirt off, and there you go, came right loose. Okay, so each of them have really great roots. All right, so we'll start off with one at a time, and I'm just going to take this pot and create a very deep hole almost to the very bottom. Not quite, almost. If I need to make it a little bit larger, I will. Now, with tomato plants, if you're not familiar with tomato plants, they have this little furry hair on the stems. Many people think those are mini roots. Well, they're really not. They are just hair on the stem to help prevent pests. However, roots will grow all along the stem if it does have contact with the soil. So with tomato plants, you can bury them pretty deep. And the reason why you want to do that is because the more roots you have, the stronger the plant will be and the better growth you'll get with that plant. So I'm going to bury this all the way up to about here on this plant. Okay? And sometimes on the next uppotting, I will take off the lower leaves just so I can probably get it up even higher. But because we just have a few leaves, I won't do that on this uppotting. Okay, so if you can see, I just place the roots down in that hole and do a light push to make sure I get it all the way down. And I'm going to lightly push the soil back around that plant. Now I want to try to get it as straight as possible, but if it's leaning or if it's to the side, it's fine. We're going to have to do another uppotting with these tomato plants in a few weeks. So we're just trying to give it its own cell so that it has room to grow and produce lots of healthy roots. Okay, there's our first uppotting. You see that? Okay. Just going to pull another cell over, and we're going to do the same thing. In the center, I'm just kind of turning and pushing to create a nice hole in there. I'm going to take my tomato plant and I'm going to plant that pretty deep. I'm going to cover up all of that growth that we have there on that stem, and that will develop more roots. I'm just going to push that down and make sure we can close in that hole. You want good soil to stem contact. You do not want air pockets. And you really can't tell because you can't see through this if you have an air pocket, and that's okay. You just want to make sure you get a good push around that side and get that hole closed in on that plant. Let me get you real close so that you can see that. I showed you that hole that we created, but now you can see there is no hole around it. That's good contact. When we water this, that soil will settle around that stem and those roots, and then it'll be just fine. Okay. Sometimes if I can't get the root to go down, because like for example, this one has a really nice thick root, I'll show you what I do. First, I'm going to make sure I try to get a really good wide hole. So it's easier to get that root into that hole. But if I'm having a little trouble, I will use my chopstick and try to help guide some of that plant. I don't want to push because it will easily tear that root. You don't want to break it off. You want as much of that root remaining as possible. It doesn't have to be all nice and pretty and fanned out, or it's okay, because those roots, when they start to grow, they'll make their own way. Okay. All right, so I got that in there pretty nice and tight. And then I want to just backfill that soil. And this one was not that full of soil, so I'm just going to take some of this excess soil and just build it up around that. Push down. We have a nice uppotting on that one. All right, 3 down and 3 more to go. Your tomatoes ready to be uppotted? What are you working on? With all the different growing zones, I would imagine there are people that are just starting their spring seeds. Okay, on that one, you can see I even got it even closer to the leaves. And again, that's okay, because you can plant them all the way up to the leaves. Sometimes if I don't get them as deep as I want, like this one still has quite a bit of stem, I'll just get some soil and backfill. And if you don't have any soil to backfill, that's fine too. It's okay. It's not mandatory, but it's just a good practice to get them planted pretty deep. All right, and then on this Kellogg's brand, this is our last one. I had 6 tomato plants in that. And this is our 6th plant. And if you notice, some of these tomato plants are larger than others in that cell, because it's the survival of the fittest. Whoever could get the most water, or the most lighting, or just the nutrients, or whatever it needed to outgrow the others. But that's fine, they'll all catch up. Okay, so that's the last Kellogg's. And so what I'll do is I will take one of them and I will label it. Now the next time I uppot these, I will label each pot, because the larger they get, the harder it is to tell them apart. And when I get to my larger pots, they're all the same color. So let me show you here how I have the tray set up. So you can see here I have a 10-20 tray, this white tray, and so I have a light green pot. We have kind of a dark green pot. We have all the terracotta colors and the gray. All of these are Kellogg's, so once we up pot these, I'll know these are all Kellogg's. Now I probably should label each pot, but when I'm color coding like this, sometimes it makes it pretty easy, so I don't tend to mess up at this stage. I usually mess up when I get to the larger pots and they're all the same color. Okay, let's move on to the next tomato plant. We're going to go to the orange accordion. Now I have 5. However, one is really small. Let me show you that. You can see there's 2 here, there's 2 here, and then there's one small one. Can you see that? Maybe if I come, can you see there's one small one in there? And I'm not going to keep this one. We're going to pick this one out. We're just going to keep the 4. But look at those roots. Great roots. So we're going to make sure we put our labels so we'll remember which one we're working with. And we have 4 of the orange accordions. So we're going to bring our 4 gray pots. And then let's just go ahead and loosen this up. Taking out that one tomato plant really isn't hurting much. To be honest with you, I probably won't plant all 4 of these. But so losing one is not a bad thing. All right, I separated the 2 that were closest together first, and then I'll go and separate each of them. There you go, those came loose really easy. And then this is where I get in trouble, because that's a really great root system for such a small tomato plant. And I really want to uppot that. I really want to keep that. I get in trouble because I end up saying I'll just keep it. I'll just keep it. Somebody can use an orange accordion. And you'll see where the roots have kind of grown around a lot of the soil. You don't need to take that off. Just leave it. It's fine. It's kind of attached itself to a small little piece of wood or a larger clump of soil. It's fine. You don't need to pick that off or remove it. It will do just fine. It grew around it because it likes it. So let's just leave it there. Okay. There are 4 orange accordions. We're going to add these back to the tray. There's probably 2 more that I want to uppot. So I'll put you guys on a time lapse. I'll go ahead and uppot those really quickly, and then we'll come back and look at other options. Okay, so on this tomato seedlings, there were a total of 4 in the cell. I only want to keep 3. So I kept the larger 2 first. And then on this one, if you notice, let me come closer. This one here, it has a much better root system than this one. Now, if I were to keep this one, it will be fine. The roots will continue to develop because remember, I'm going to plant it deep and there'll be more roots that will grow from the stem. So if you do have a seedling that's small like this and you still want to keep it, go ahead and up-pot it. It should be fine. But I only want 3, so I'm going to keep this one and I'll go ahead and just discard this one. Now that's 2 tomato plants that I've had to discard. I'm heartbroken. I'm heartbroken. If it grew, I usually will keep it. But I did plant pretty heavy when I started my seedlings. So I can't keep everything. I don't have room to grow everything. And even with the amount that I'm keeping, I still will have some to share. Okay, so I'm not gonna keep you guys here to watch me up-pot all of them. You kind of get the concept. We'll do the same thing over and over again. I will only do a few more of these. I believe I'm going to do the pineapple, and there's 3 here. There's 2 cells and I have about 5, but there's 3 really large ones, so I'll keep those 3. And I might do the orange Wellington. They look like they're starting to get quite a few of their true leaves. So I will probably do the orange Wellington. But the other ones, I'm probably going to let those grow a little bit more before we up-pot those. They could go and get a little bit taller or fuller. It's not, no rush. I've put the tomato plants over on this cart and I've pulled out the flower tray, and I have this 4-cell tray from Bootstrap Farmer. As you can see here, there's 4 separate cells. If you can see that. It also has the large holes at the bottom for drainage. I'm going to up-pot the red roselles in here. So I have 4, 2 in each cell, and I'm going to put 1 in each cell, and this entire container will be my up-potting for the roselles. Okay. Okay, so on the plants, when I'm pulling them out, you may notice that I grab here by the stem to pull. I usually don't do that if there's just one plant. I usually will continue to squeeze the bottom and kind of push it up until I can grab the soil. But because I have 2, it's a little bit stronger than just pulling on 1. And I'm not pulling. I'm pretty much just guiding it out. Basically, I've already pushed it. That soil is dry. I've already pushed it up out of the bottom of the cell, and I'm basically just kind of guiding it out of the cell. Yeah, those are some really nice roots. So we're just going to separate these, and because they've gotten a little leggy, and this is what I mean by leggy, because these have grown very well, look how long those stems are. So what they will do is, as plants are growing, they're reaching for the sunlight or the grow lights, and they become leggy because they're trying to grow faster than the actual plant is growing, and so they become what we call leggy. Well, that's fine. When they're young, you can plant them a little deep. So I will plant these a little deeper, not as deep as I did the tomato plants, but I will plant these a little deeper, and that way we can give it a little bit more room for growth. But let's go ahead and get these. Let me separate this one. Get those. Those are nice roots. These roselles grew really quick. That soil is so dry, it pretty much completely came off of the plant. And that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and make 4 holes in here. And then I'll do the same thing. I'm going to bring you guys in a little bit closer I'm just going to guide those roots down into that hole. And it's more about making sure your hole is large enough, because you don't want, again, to tear the roots, or you don't want to break the stem. And it's very tender at this age. And then I'm just going to push that in a little bit. Now, you see there's a lot of soil that goes, I've pushed it down, there's quite a bit of room. I'm going to backfill with some of this soil, so, and that'll also cover that stem a little bit more. Okay, so I'm just going to get that stem in there, and I'm just going to guide those roots down the hole. And because there's enough room, the stem will follow. I don't have to shove it in. I don't have to force it down. Okay. Again, I'm going to just guide those roots in. And because my hole is large enough, it'll just settle in. And another thing is, if you are uppotting for the first time, one of the reasons why we start extra seedlings, because if one of these breaks, I'll be fine. To be honest with you, I only need 2 roselles. These grow to be humongous plants. They're not like tomato plants. It grows into a nice bush, not like a tree or anything, but 2, and the amount of roselles that grow on each one, to be honest with you, I only need 2. But just in case I break one when I'm uppotting, or it doesn't survive transplanting, I already have a backup. And the cost of these seeds, compared to if I bought the plant, is little to nothing. I think, to be honest with you, these seeds were from last year's roselle plant. I saved my own seeds, so they didn't actually cost me anything. Okay, now let's label. These are our red roselles. So as you can see, we have all of our tomato plants that we've uppotted. And we also have our roselle that we've uppotted. And all of my labels are on the back row. I will get these watered by bottom watering them. So I will add water in the bottom of the tray and let them absorb the water from the bottom holes. Okay. All right, so I want to bring you guys in a little bit closer here. Now that we've uppotted this tomato plant, I want to show you how we will start watering these plants going forward. So we will begin to bottom water these plants instead of watering on top. There's 3 reasons why. 1, the seed when we planted was a lot closer to the top of the soil, and we needed the seed to stay moist in order for it to open up and to germinate and to start developing roots. So now that this plant actually has roots, we want to water the roots. So we will bottom water. We're going to add water into the 10-20 tray, allow the pot to soak up the water through the bottom, which is closer to where the roots are. We want to feed the roots. So we no longer have to pour water on top. We just pour it into the 10-20 tray so the pot can absorb it from the bottom. And third is because now that we have uppotted these, and remember we planted them a little bit deeper, so the stem is exposed to the soil. Or if the top of the soil stays too moist, it would cause what's called a dampening off effect, which means that the plant is pulling in too much moisture from where the stem touches the soil, that it will start to close itself up. But your plant will die off here where the soil and the plant meets. So you don't want the top of the soil to stay soggy or overly watered. So we're going to water from the bottom. We're just going to water enough to kind of keep the lower half of the pot moist. If we do get a lot of water and it pulls all the way to the top, that's fine. We just don't want to keep watering it. You don't want it to stay moist. Allow it some time to dry out. Again, soon we'll be adding the circulating fans. You can see I have fans behind me. We'll be adding the fans to create that wind effect, to emulate wind, or that the plant is outside. And that will create a stronger stem. So from that movement of the resistance of the wind, and then this will become a much stronger stem. Okay, and plus that wind will help dry out the top of the soil, or keep it dry. It doesn't have to be dry to the touch. You just don't want it overly saturated or overly watered. Okay, so I have the flower containers still out. We just took out the roselles out of these two containers and uppotted those. I was looking at this tray trying to decide if I was going to reseed any of the cells in this tray. Okay, I'm going to bring you guys in really close. I was reviewing this tray and I was trying to determine if I wanted to reseed any of these cells that have not germinated. And I noticed in the mini snack bell pepper, I actually have some that is starting to germinate. That is a seed coming up right there. And if I remove this so that you can see behind it, I have more baby snack bells. And there are 3, there's one right behind here. There's 3 seedlings in this cell, and there's about 4 that are coming up in this cell. I have some baby cabbage behind that have germinated just fine. And I had the alpine strawberries in this 3 cell. Those seeds are really old, but I just ordered some new ones that came in today, and I think I'm going to reseed those just to see if they will germinate, because nothing's coming up on these. These seeds were probably from 2022, maybe even 2020. So we'll go ahead and reseed the alpine strawberries. And I also, moving a little further back, I also added some giant chocolate peppers, added some Sarga giant chocolate peppers, and I'm getting some germination. And here you can see there's a little one coming up in front of the tag. And then the Anaheim peppers behind this also has some germination. You can see back there. So I think this tray is probably okay. And I don't think we need to really reseed anything other than the alpine strawberries. One of the things I used to notice when I was watching other YouTubers and how they would always play with their plants like this, I'd be thinking, why are they doing that? I'd be so afraid they're gonna... Ooh, that's my calendula. We were having some late starts on the calendula, but look at that. Those are beautiful. The reason why we do, or you should not be so sensitive with your plants, is you have to emulate their conditions outside. For example, this is emulating wind. When the wind would blow, it would do the same thing to these plants or these starts. So actually, I do have 2 fans here in my garage that soon I will be turning on that will emulate the conditions of outdoors, which is wind. The resistance on the stem creates a very strong plant. Okay, so I've brought the pepper tray out, and I do see some life growing in some of those that I didn't think were going to germinate. But I'm going to reseed the tortillero. I'm going to reseed the sweet banana and maybe the alma paprika. Everything else looks like I have some sight of growth. For example, on this lesia pepper, you can see the soil right here starting to open up. That's because the plant is pushing its way through the soil. There's one right behind that label that's also a lesia pepper. And I have one. And I have one right here in the back on this back one. So it looks like each one pretty much has one seedling coming up. I may add a lesia pepper here. I don't see any signs of growth here. So I will add a few more lesia peppers in this cell. So I will be patient. I will reseed the ones that I mentioned. But other than that, I'm just going to put them back under the grow light and the heat mat and give it a little bit longer, especially again since we have had such cold temperatures here in the garage. Okay guys, that is uppotting your seedlings. I could have left these in the cell even longer. However, I wanted you to see how to uppot your seedlings and how to put them into a larger container and an individual container. So just in case your seedlings were a little further along than mine, I want to provide an opportunity for you to see me uppot a few of my seedlings that were ready to be uppotted. Again, they could have stayed in the cell a little bit longer, another week or so, and they would have been fine. So I hope this video has been helpful. I hope that your seedlings are doing well and you're ready to uppot as we get closer to transplanting them outside. We do have a few more stages to go through, which will be uppotting them to one more size larger container. And then we'll start hardening them off, which means we have to get them used to being outside in the actual sunlight and the actual elements of outdoors. Once we do that and they're acclimated to the outdoor conditions, we will be ready to plant them in our garden. Thank you for helping me uppot my seedlings today. I hope it goes well with uppotting yours. If you have any questions, please let me know. And please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Have a great day. Bye-bye.